All right. Grace and peace to the body that is the church. I apologize for the late start. I showed up late and then we had some technical issues, but we've worked through all that. So, with tonight's video, what we're going to do is I have a guest defending Adventism. Him and I are going to discuss the 2300 in Daniel chapter 8. Myself coming from the Antiochus position and him coming from the Seventh day Adventist position. What I'm going to do is I'm going to let him introduce himself, and then he can say whatever he needs to say. And then he's going to present his position on Daniel 8. And then from there, it's going to be pretty casual, laid back. I think we might start questioning each other, whether him or I, we'll just let it flow. But with that being said, defending Adventism, if you want to introduce yourself to the audience, you're welcome to.
Okay. Thank you so much, brother. Actually, I didn't get your name. What's your name?
Brandon,
Brandon. Okay. So my name is Eric.
nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. So, basically about myself, I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I was born in the Adventist church. I've always had a love for the Word of God. Um, but then, in my mind, I'm convinced that the Seventh-day Adventist church is the remnant church of God spoken of uh, in Revelation chapter 12, verse 17. So why I'm trying to do this, or why I actually accepted to have this discussion, is because I want to know if I'm right. If I'm wrong, then I'm actually willing to to uh, maybe I should put it this way. I'm a truth seeker. Okay, so whenever I find truth, I accept it and I go along with it. So just being online, I've always seen you know critics, especially of the Seventh-day Adventist Church, that are attacking the Adventist Church, saying it's a cult and stuff like that. So I felt compelled to start a YouTube channel so that I can share most of these truths that which I have found myself to be truth. And so when my brother here told me that he's willing to debate, I was like, yeah, I think that will be a good thing. I want to make it clear that this is not a debate. It's just like he mentioned, a conversation where I'm going to share my position and then he'll share his position. What I have to mention though is I am not well conversant with his position. So I'll just share my position and then, we see how it goes from there. I don't know if there's something I was supposed to mention from at the beginning, or should I just start?
Awesome. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah. So you are welcome to start with your position if you like and take whatever time you need. And then I'll lay mine out. A lot of the people who follow me already am aware of my position, but for your sake,
Okay,
I'll lay it out pretty quick.
okay, thank you. All right, so the way that I will start this is I'll start by reading a quote here that says that studying the Bible is like assembling a large jigsaw puzzle. If you gather just two or three pieces together, it's nearly impossible to discern the entire picture. Perhaps in those two or three pieces, you can see a horse and you conclude that you are assembling a picture of horses. But a few more pieces reveal a chicken and a cow, and then once you have assembled hundreds of pieces, you can finally see that you have been working on a picture of a landscape, which includes a city, a farm, and a range of mountains in the distance. So I have been convinced that studying the book of Daniel is so much so. It has employed what a lot of people have called repeat and enlarge principle, and I believe that a lot of, the main problem that critics of this position have made is I feel like they try to study the book of Daniel chapter 8 in isolation. So today I just want us to connect these visions because in the book of Daniel we have how many visions? So we have Daniel 2 is a vision of kingdoms, Daniel 7 is a vision of kingdoms, and Daniel 8. Okay, the rest, I think those are the only visions, if I'm not wrong. The rest is an angel coming to give an interpretation or stuff like that. But so the first thing I want to do is connect Daniel chapter 2 with Daniel chapter 7. So in Daniel chapter 2, both of these chapters have kingdoms. And these are four kingdoms which are ruling one after another. So Daniel chapter 2 has an image, just as you can see on your screens, an image of head of fine gold. Then we have breasts and arms of silver, and then we have belly and thighs of brass, and then the fourth kingdom is kind of interesting because it's in two phases. So the first phase we see legs of iron, and then the other phase we see the feet, which is of iron and clay. So Daniel chapter 7 also has the same four beasts. So in that chapter 7, verse 17, I think Daniel tells us that these four beasts are four kingdoms. So the first lion with eagle's wings being plucked. And then the second beast is a bear with three wings in the mouth, raised itself on one side. And then the third beast is the leopard with four wings of a fowl. And this leopard has four heads. Now, the fourth beast that Daniel sees in chapter 7 is actually, he says, is a dreadful one and terrible, but then it has 10 horns and iron teeth. Now, the first thing that I'm already seeing here as a match, which is actually matching the vision of Daniel chapter 2, is that these legs of iron. Okay, so in Daniel chapter 2, we have legs of iron. So in my mind, I'm thinking this has to be a match because if the fourth kingdom says it has 10 iron teeth, actually it says great iron teeth. Okay, so I should think that that's a match with Daniel chapter 2, the legs of iron. And then after these legs of iron, we have a little horn, which is on the fourth beast, which comes among the 10 horns that is in the fourth beast. So in both cases, the fourth kingdom is ruling until the second coming of Jesus. That I feel for me is key. So chapter 2, we see a stone cut out without hands that smites the image on the feet of iron and clay. Chapter 7, the fourth beast is slain, the body is destroyed and given to the burning flame. Then the saints possess the kingdom. That is, if you're reading chapter 11, I mean, chapter 7, verse 11, 22, 26, and 27, that will tell you that the last, the last, the last what? The last kingdom is reigning until the second coming of Jesus. So far, as you have noticed, I have not identified these kingdoms. So let's, yeah, maybe before I identify the kingdoms, is there something that you are not agreeing with anything that I have said? Do you agree with everything I said so far?
Yeah, I agree with the connection between Daniel 2 and 7, and the
Okay.
four metals are represented in chapter 7 as the four beasts.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's great. So let's now see if we can identify the kingdoms. So, of course, the first, chapter 2, that's pretty easy because Daniel tells us, I mean, when he's interpreting the vision to the king, he says, "Thou, O king, are the head of Babylon." So, I mean, is this head of gold? So we can conclude that Daniel, I mean, the head of gold is Babylon, right? And then the second one, if you read Daniel chapter 5, verse 25, actually it tells us that after Babylon fell, the second kingdom that came to power was the Medes and Persians, which is the Medo-Persia kingdom. And then the third kingdom is Greece. So this now we have to transition now to chapter 8, verse 20 and 20, 21 and 22, which tells us that in the vision of Daniel 8, which we haven't gotten to yet, but in that vision, we are told that those two kingdoms, of the ram and the he goat, those are kingdoms of Medo-Persia and Greece. So, and then the fourth kingdom, I think this is where we have we have contention. But just like I have broken it down, is that in both of these chapters, chapter 2 and chapter 7, we have the fourth kingdom in two phases. Do you agree with that? Maybe I should have asked that before I started. Do you agree that, I mean, not do you agree, but do you see that clearly that Daniel chapters 2 and 7, or the fourth kingdom is in two phases?
Um, Possibly. I'm not going to
Possibly.
give a affirmative yay or nay.
Okay, that's okay. So, So the legs of I okay, I'm pretty sure you're familiar with the Adventist position that this the fourth kingdom is actually in two phases. So the legs of iron will represent pagan Rome, which is basically Rome without a pope, and then the feet, or if you will, the toes of iron and clay, that's coming after the fall of Rome, which is the 10 kingdoms that came out of Rome. So then when we go to Daniel chapter 7, the fourth kingdom, the fourth kingdom we see is terrible beast. So this fourth kingdom, we are told that, let me see my notes here. This fourth kingdom, we are told that on the head of this beast, we have 10 horns. And then we can clearly see a little horn coming among the 10 horns. So the Adventist position is that this little horn is actually the second phase of that kingdom, of the Rome kingdom. So it's basically one kingdom, but this is the second phase because that little horn is on the fourth kingdom. So if you agree with that, then let's now go to Daniel chapter 8, because I think that's where we have a lot of you know, a lot of, I would say, not disagreements or different views, I would say. So Daniel chapter 2, just like you said, 2 and 7 describe four kingdoms. Now Daniel chapter 8, in my view, is describing three kingdoms. Now Babylon is still in power, but has not been mentioned. And I believe this is because when in Daniel chapter 8 and verse 14, when Daniel hears two beings questioning, they say, how long is the vision concerning the daily? In chapter 9, when the angel comes to give him a description of that vision, he says, what does it say? From the commandments to build and restore Jerusalem. That commandment went forth, I believe, went forth in the kingdom of Mid of Persia. That's why Babylon is not mentioned, because the vision in chapter 8 and verse 14 says, how long shall be the vision? So that vision starts from Mid of Persia. That's why I believe Babylon is not mentioned. And then, so we have a bear with three wings in the mouth, raised on one side. That's, in my view, will match the two horns, which one is higher than the other. Okay, so I've not said that, but in Daniel chapter 8, maybe I should pull this here. Daniel chapter 8, we see a vision of a ram and a he goat. So, just like I said, the three wings in the mouth, the bear with the three wings in chapter 7 matches the ram, which has two horns, one higher than the other, because in chapter 7 we said that the mouth it's raised on one side. So I hope that you can see a clear match with Middle Persia and the ram in chapter 8. And then the leopard, which has four wings and four heads, that is a clear match with um, with the he goats in chapter 8. Okay. So, but chapter 8, he says that, let me see here. So, chapter 8, maybe, is it okay? Can you pull the Bible? I think this is a good time that you can pull the Bible right now to go into chapter 8.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I,
What version do you prefer?
do you have King James?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm hearing an echo behind there. Is that, I don't know why that is.
It might be because it's getting my microphone's getting feedback from my speakers, probably.
Yeah. So the position that I'm making right now is that chapter 8 has a vision that's because chapter 2 and 7 have given us four kingdoms. Chapter 8, in my view, is giving us three kingdoms, which is Middle Persia, Greece, and Rome in both phases. Which we have said that in chapter 2 and 7, Rome is in two phases. The first phase is chapter 2 is the legs, and then the next phase is toes of iron and clay, and then chapter 7 is the fourth beast, which is purple Rome. But then the 10 horns, among the 10 horns, there's coming a little horn, so that is the second phase. So in chapter 8, I guess now the question that we have to answer is the little horn in chapter 8 the same as the little horn in chapter 7? So I want to share a few reasons why I believe it's the same horn. Number one, we can clearly see that they are using the same name. I don't know if God is trying to, confuse us with a different, with a different name, because in my view, if this was a different kingdom, I think God could have used a different symbol to describe that. So that's my number one. That's my number one point. That it has to be the same one because it's using the same name. Then the next point I will say is that the little horn in chapter 7 is reigning until the second coming. Okay, yeah, I think we have already established that. So what about in chapter 8? Is the little horn in chapter 8, is it reigning until the second coming? So this is when I want us to read chapter 8 and verse 18. Sorry, verse 17. What's verse 17 say? I don't know if I maybe let me go so I can also see. Yeah, okay, chapter 8. Chapter 8, verse 17. Let's go down to
Which
verse
verse?
17.
Which verse you want?
Chapter 8, verse 17.
Sorry, it's kind of when you talk, it tends to be kind of muffled. You said 20
17.
or 17. My bad. There we go. Yeah.
Yeah, it's okay. So it says, so he came near where I stood, and when he came, and when he came, I was afraid and fell on my face. But he said unto me, understand, O son of man, for at the time of the end shall be the vision. Okay. Verse 19, let's see what one is. 19 says, and he said, behold, I will make thee to know what shall be in the last end of the indignation, for at the time appointed, the end shall be. So what about 23? Let's go down to 23. 23. Scroll down to 23. Okay, 23 says, now that being broken, whereas four stood up for it, four kingdoms shall stand. Uh, four kingdoms. Is that 23? Okay, maybe I meant 26. Let me see. Yeah, 26. And the vision of the evening and the morning, which was told, is true. Whereas shut thou up the vision, for it shall be for many days. So already we can see that this vision is going to be for for a long time, or then it says for many days. So the next thing I want to say is that chapter. Let me see what verse this is. I'm looking for the verse that says, "They shall be broken without hand." Actually, yeah, 25. Let's say 25. And through his policy also he shall cause craft to prosper in his hand, and he shall magnify himself in his heart, and by peace shall destroy many. He shall also stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. For me, that last word there, without hand, is key for me because that's an exact verbiage from Daniel chapter 2, where the last phase of the fourth kingdom, which is the feet of iron and clay, is actually, hit with. Actually, it clearly says that. Can we go to chapter 2? Let's go to Daniel chapter 2 so that we can see that that's exact verbiage, which is broken without hands. So, what I'm trying to say right now is the the little horn in chapter 7 is reigning until the second coming. So why I'm trying to say that it's the same little horn in chapter 8 is because the little horn in chapter 8 also is reigning until the second coming. So chapter 2, let's read verse 34. No, sorry, I meant chapter 2. Let's go chapter 2 first, verse 34, so that we can see what is chapter 4. It says, thou sawest till a stone was cut out without hands, okay, which smote the image upon his feet, that were of iron and clay and break to pieces. So I don't know if you agree that this stone which is cut without hands is the second coming. Do you agree with that position?
Um, it's been a little while since I've read chapter 2. If I remember correctly, I do not.
You don't see that this is the second coming?
I'd have to read through chapter 2 again, but um,
Okay, so basically, he's in chapter 2, Daniel sees a vision of a head of gold, and then a breast and arms of silver, belly and thighs of brass, and then legs of iron,
I think that's
and
the
then
first
the
coming,
feet of.
actually.
Huh?
I think that's the first coming, actually. The stone was cut without
Stone?
hands. I think I would hold to that being actually the first coming of the Messiah.
The first coming.
Yeah, but that gets into kind of my millennial view, which is not going to be premillennialism, and
Mhm.
yours is, and so that'll probably distract a lot, and so I won't get into that. But I'll agree with you for argument's sake.
Okay, so um, let's go down to 45, the same chapter 2, verse 45. See what it says. For as much as thou sawest that the stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it brake in pieces the iron, the brass, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what shall come to pass hereafter. And the dream is certain, and the interpretation sure of. So when this is going on, actually, there's a place that says where and this became a great mountain. Where does it first say? There's a place that says, I think it's back to chapter 35. Can you go back to chapter 35, see what it says? I mean, verse 35. So again, like I said, I'm new to most of this position. What I've always done is just studying this, I mean, the Adventist position, which I believe is the most accurate. So when you tell me that the sun which is hitting the image in Daniel chapter 2 is the first coming, I don't even know how to respond to that, because we can clearly see that. Let's read chapter 2 again. Then was the iron, the clay, brass, silver, and the gold broken to pieces together and became like the chaff of the summer threshing floors. And the wind carried them away, that no place was found for them. And the stone that smote the image became a great mountain and filled the earth. So, what will you attribute to this image becoming a great image and filling the earth? If the cutting, I mean, if the cutting without hand is the first coming, do we see a second coming anywhere in that verse?
Well, either way, again, I don't want to distract you because I don't think you've heard my views on the millennium, and you're probably
Actually,
not.
I haven't.
Yeah, you're probably not too familiar. I mean, you might be, but probably most likely not familiar with what's called amillennialism. And
Okay.
so,
So sorry, I'm sorry to cut you like that, but let me just like let me like I want to kind of give a summary of my position, then I can give you a chance to give your stab at that. Does that sound good?
yeah, well, go ahead and finish up, and however you want to finish up with your Daniel chapter 8 position, and then I'll lay out my chapter 8 position.
Sure. Okay, so just like I was beginning, is that the way that these chapters should be understood is, I believe, together. If we take Daniel chapter 8 into isolation, I believe that's why we are having a lot of these problems, because to me, I believe that chapter 8 is connected to so many other chapters in the Bible, like Revelation. I don't know if we want to get time to go there, but the only way that this makes sense to me is if chapter 8 is studied in connection with other chapters, not just taking it out of isolation. So I mean, what I was trying to show is that chapter 2 and 7, clearly we have made a connection of chapter 2 and chapter 7, which is giving a summary, I mean, a vision of four kingdoms. But chapter 8 is giving us a vision of three, which, like I said, the first one is the he got and the ram, which the angel clearly says those represent Middle Persia and Greece. We can see those in the previous chapters. So in my mind, I'm thinking the next thing that is coming in chapter 7 is the little horn. So if chapter 8 is using the same little horn, it has to be the same little horn. And I've given two reasons why I believe. Maybe I could give more if we get time, but I wanted you maybe to address those. The first one that I've given is that chapter 8 is using the same word as the little horn in chapter 7. The second one is uh, uh, the last kingdoms in chapter 2 and 7 are reigning until the second coming. And I have clearly shown that the little horn in chapter 8 also is reigning until the second coming, because it is cut without hand, which for me, I believe that is the second coming, which is an exact verbiage from chapter 2, which I said is the second coming. So for me, that's kind of how I look at it. Like I said, I started them in connection like that instead of taking them out of isolation. Maybe I can give you time to also give your position before I go to connecting it with chapter 9 and Revelation 10.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. Yeah, we'll get more into the differences that we have. I think after
Okay, okay,
I present mine, and we'll once I present my position, I think you'll see kind of our differences.
okay, okay.
So I do agree with my guest that the visions are linked. The question is how are they all linked together? And I would posit that they are linked depending on which beast system it is talking about. So, for example, chapters 2 and 7 have all four beast systems, starting with Babylon and ending with Rome. What I'd posit for chapter 8, though, is that its focus is on the third beast system. So, in chapter 7, that would be the cheetah, the four-headed cheetah with the four wings. But the vision starts with the second beast. It kind of mentions that, and then right away it shows that it is taken over by the third beast. And so, what the Adventist position has to um, prove from the text is that there is a transition from the third beast system into the fourth beast system in chapter 8 in order for that connection to happen, or that connection to be there, excuse me. And so what we see here, and I'll start reading here in chapter 8. It says, I raised my eyes and saw, and behold, a ram standing on the bank of the canal. So we have a beast system that is introduced, and is introduced as a ram. So what you'll notice in all of these visions, whether chapter 2, 7, 8, or I think that's it. I can't remember if, I don't think chapter 11 through 12 has any imagery of beast, but the visions that have imagery of beast will always present a new beast system with a new beast. So whether if it's a ram or a goat or a cheetah or a bear or a lion, whenever a new um, world empire is presented as a new beast is presented. And the reason why I repeat that is because here in chapter 8, there's only two beast systems that are ever mentioned. There's the one I just read, which is the ram, which is Medo Persia. My guest and I both agree with that. Then there is in chapter, or in verse 5, excuse me, it says, as I was considering, behold, a male goat came from the west. Both my guest and I agree that this is Greece. So you see that it went from presenting the second beast, and now there is a new beast system that comes into focus and is represented as a different kind of beast. So what we want to see, what we want to look for in chapter 8 is if, in fact, it does transition to the fourth beast, which in chapter 7 is that um, ferocious creature with iron teeth, then we need to see that kind of creature mentioned in chapter 8. And if it's not, then we do not see a transition from the third beast system to the fourth beast system. So, with that being said, my position is that this uh, whole chapter, its main focus and its main concern is on the third beast system, and specifically the little horn that arises during the time of the third beast system. So, I'll continue reading. A male goat came from the west across the face of the whole earth without touching the ground, and the goat had a conspicuous horn between his eyes. He came to the ram with the two horns, which I had seen standing on the bank of the canal, and he ran at him in his powerful wrath. I saw him come close to the ram, and he was enraged against him and struck the ram and broke his two horns. So there is the third beast system destroying the second beast system. And the ram had no power to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and trampled on him. And the ram had no power to stand before him, but he cast him down to the ground and trampled on him. And there was no one who could rescue the ram from his power. Then the goat became exceedingly great. But when he was strong, the great horn was broken. So we're still in the third beast system right now. And instead of it, there came up four conspicuous horns towards the four winds of heaven. Out of one of them came a little horn. Now, this is going to be the main focus of this vision. All of this previous from verse 2 or verse 1 all the way to verse 8 is kind of like giving the context of this little horn, what beast system he arises from, which is the third beast. So he's a part of the third beast system. So he's going to be a Greek ruler, a Greek king or emperor, and it kind of gives us the time frame of this vision. Okay, verse 8. So out of one of them came a little horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, toward the east, and toward the glorious land. It grew great even to the host of heaven, and some of the host and some of the stars it threw down to the ground and trampled on them. So right here now it's describing the activity of the little horn, which I would posit is Antiochus the fourth. And what this is describing is what I call the activity of the little horn. And the activity of the little horn is to do exactly this, is to trample the host on the ground. And it's also to become great, even as great as the prince of the host. And it is to take away, in verse 11, the regular burnt offering and the place of his sanctuary. He's to overthrow that. And a host will be given over to it, that is, to the little horn, together with the burnt offering because of transgression. So notice here that the little horn is given a host and is given the regular burnt offering in the sanctuary, and this is because of transgression. And so we need to ask what transgressions or transgressors um, cause this to happen. And it says, and it will it will throw truth to the ground, and it will act, and it will prosper. Now, here's the key section right here. It says, then I heard, so Daniel says, then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the one who spoke, for how long is the vision? Notice this here. The question is asked. So there's a question that is asked. It says, for how long is the vision? And notice this vision, it concerns, or in other words, excuse me, the focus of this vision, the main point, the main things we need to focus on here is concern is the regular burnt offering, the transgression that makes desolate, and the giving over of the sanctuary and a host to be trampled underfoot. So there's somebody that gives over the sanctuary and gives over the host to be trampled underfoot. Okay, so there's the question. In other words, for how long will the little horn be active? That's a way to summarize what that question is. So the answer is given in verse 14. And so in just in plain language, when you ask a question, then a question and then the answer is given. So the answer is for 2300 evenings and mornings will this little horn be active? And then when that 2300 is done, then the sanctuary will be restored to its rightful state. And so what the Adventist has to show is that one, they need to show a transition to the fourth beast system, which I don't think they can do, but we'll see if our Adventist friend here can. What they also need to show is that for 2300 evenings and mornings, however long you believe that is, which for the Adventists is it's years, they have to show that the sanctuary has been trampled underfoot for 2300 evenings and mornings. Because right here, these two verses show that the activity of the little horn is linked with the 2300. And then they also have to show that the regular burnt offering was taken away for 2300 years. And they also have to show that the host was given over for that long as well, too. And so that is a summary of my position. I think you said your name is Eric, right? I apologize.
Yes, my name is
Yeah.
yes.
And so with that, that's kind of a walkthrough of my position on this chapter. What we can do now, if you like, you can ask me questions, or I can ask you questions, and we can go back and forth.
Yeah. Okay, so do you want me, can I go first?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay, so I've really tried to, just like I said, I've always wanted to understand. I mean, I really believe that, personally, if you ask me, I believe that I have the truth because these visions are making sense to me in that I have tried to put them together, not studying them together, not in isolation, but, as basically as just a continuation, or one vision is giving more information on the other one. But as far as I'm concerned, I don't believe anyone has been able to give a counter argument to the 300-day prophecy or interpretation of the Adventist church. Because just like right now, maybe if I should ask you, what are these 300 days? Are they days, evening? I think, because I know a lot of people say evenings and mornings. We say they are days, which transition to years. But how do you understand that? Does that have like a beginning? Is there a beginning for those 2300 days, or how you understand the 2300 day?
Yeah, so I believe the 2300 is symbolic language
Yeah.
referring to
Mhm.
1150 days. The reason why I think that is that one of the focuses of this activity of the little horn is, if you notice, the regular burnt offering is mentioned multiple times, like 3 or 4 times. So here we see in verse 11, regular burnt offering was taken away. Verse 12, the regular burnt offering was taken away because of transgressions. And then in verse 13, the regular burnt offering is again mentioned. So there's a heavy focus on that. And then we go down to verse 14, we see evenings and mornings. And nowhere else in the Bible do we see a time prophecy, as far as I'm aware, ever mentioned with the time of evenings and mornings, only here in chapter 8. So I think there is a very strong link there with that. And when we look in the Bible, and whenever the Bible talks about what's called the Hatamid, so the regular or the daily, that's
Mm.
translated here as a regular burnt offering, it is always referring to the evening and morning, or the morning and evening sacrifices that were done, not for transgressions, not for a sin offering, but it was simply for the Lord's pleasure. And that was done or morning and evening. And so we see that kind of that being used right here, I believe, in evenings and mornings. And so how I understand that is 2300 represents 2300 sacrifices, which happen in the morning and at night. And so really, the time length of this prophecy is 1150 days.
So I'm just curious to how you came to 1150, because this one says here 2300 evenings and mornings. Is there something in this chapter that can can prompt you to say that this has to be 1150? Okay, so that's okay. Sorry, I'm sorry. That's the first question. The second question is my understanding is in chapter, because this vision that actually doesn't understand it. I wish we had time to read to the end of the chapter. But when the angel comes, he tries to explain. He actually explains what the ram and the he goat represent, but there is a part that Daniel does not understand, because at the end of it he says, "But no one understood the vision." Then in chapter 9, the way that I connect those chapters is when the angel comes to explain. Actually, I was going to also mention that word, the vision is the entire vision, not just what the little horn is doing. So when the angel comes to explain in chapter 9, he says 70 weeks are determined upon thy people and upon thy holy city. Now, the original word there, determined, is cut off. My understanding is it has to be cut off from the previous vision, which is 2300 days day prophecy. So maybe the second question will be, so the first question, like I said, is how do you figure out 1150? And the second question is, how do you understand Daniel chapter 9, verse 25, where he says 70 weeks are cut off, cut off here?
Yeah. Okay. So, if you remember, I mentioned a couple times that the little horn becomes active in chapter 8 because of transgressions. So that means there are transgressors. And this causes the sanctuary and the host to be given over. Now, what my position is here is that these are the transgressions of the Jews. They had reached their full, and the indignation and wrath of God was poured out upon them. That's why it says, and the sanctuary and the host were given over. God gave them over to the little horn as punishment and curses upon them for their transgressions and sins. And we see this here. And we see that in chapter 9 as well, right? If you read from verse 1 to verse 23, Daniel's prayer talks about how they have been made desolate because of their sins and their wickedness, and that he's praying to God to forgive them and to restore them and restore his land and restore the temple. And so, in the same fashion here, what we see is that, let me get to it real quick. Verse 19. Yeah, verse 19, it says, he said, behold, I will make known to you what shall be at the latter end of the indignation. So, indignation in the Bible is God's wrath that is being poured out upon sinners and on wickedness, unrepented sin and transgressions. Now, this indignation for it refers to the appointed time of the end. So, the appointed time of the end would be the end when this indignation is be poured out upon the Jews who were transgressors, and then it would be for 1150 days, and then that would be the end of that indignation, and they would be restored. So we keep reading on here. Let me see. Yeah, okay. So verse 20, as for the ram that you saw with the two horns, these are the kings of Medo Persia. So it's interpreting the vision for us, so we don't have to guess at what it means. And the goat is the king of Greece, and the great horn between his eyes is the first king. As for the horn that was broken in place of which four others arose, four kingdoms shall arise from his nation, but not with his power. Now here's what I want to focus on. And at the latter end of their kingdom, so that their kingdom would be the four kingdoms right here just mentioned, at the latter end of their kingdom, when the transgressors have reached their limit. So the question I would ask you in return is that who are these transgressors that are at the latter end of these four kingdoms? And who is this king of boldface, one who understands riddles? Who is that comes out to punish these transgressors? So my position is that these are the Jews who their transgressions have reached the limit. And as a side note, chapter 11 does talk about this very same thing as well too. And they do talk a little more in depth about the transgressions of the Jews, and how there are, like in verse 14 of chapter 11, it talks about the what's the terminology? The violent of your people go and join, and it is with the kingdom of Greece, I believe, that they join to fight. Then also talks about those who break God's covenant to join with the little horn, who I say is Antiochus. So there are transgressions, and we do know that from extra biblical sources as well that the Jews were very wicked around this time period as well too. They were becoming essentially um, pagan in their lifestyle. They were having the gymnasiums built. They were worshiping as the Greeks did. They were starting to when it got really bad, they were forbidding Sabbaths to be kept, feast days to be kept, and all that kind of stuff. So, um, but I think that answered your question, unless you have a follow up question for me on that.
No, the second question I had was understanding chapter 9, 24 and
Oh yeah,
25, that says, yeah,
yeah, that's right.
okay.
So I do not connect chapter 9 in the way that you do with chapter 8. I understand why you do that, because it gives you a starting point for the 2300. But again, I believe that is an issue because, as I showed, the 2300 is directly linked with the activity of the little horn. So if you do start that in 457 BC, that means the little horn was active starting in 457 BC, and that the sanctuary was trampled underfoot starting in 457 BC and for 2300 years. So I think that's a big problem for the SD8 position.
Okay, so,
Oh,
right.
yeah. No, go ahead. That's fine. Go ahead.
Now, I was going to ask, do you have that thing where you pull up the original words of, the original words of these verses that are used? Do you have that?
Yeah.
Okay, could you pull up the original word in chapter 9, verse, what is that? Chapter 9, verse, is that 14? Yeah, 13. Sorry, 13.
Verse,
Because, yeah, but chapter 9, verse 13.
verse 13. Oh, okay.
Sorry, chapter 8, verse 13. I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah,
Chapter
yeah, yeah.
8, verse 13. Yeah.
There we go.
Okay. I need the word I'm looking for is, let me see, uh, concerning the vision. I'm looking for the word vision. Yeah, vision. The word vision. What is that word? What's the original word?
It's Kazon.
Chapter 8 and verse 13.
Yeah, it's Kazon.
Kazan?
Yeah. I'm not sure if you can see
Okay.
it.
Yeah, I can see it. But I'm asking, okay, so the way that we interpret this is, it says, how long shall be the vision? This vision has to be the entire vision, not just the little horn. This vision that Daniel has seen in chapter 8 is starting from the ram and he goat, and then transitioning to the little horn, and that little horn is reigning until the second coming. So my understanding of that will be, because you're trying to connect uh, those activities to the little horn, and the time that it's doing all these activities. But the way I'm connecting that is this: when the angel is asking how long shall be the vision, this vision that is asking about is the entire vision, not just the activities of the little horn. I was looking for a word that says mare because I believe in the way that Daniel has used these words. Um, I think when he's talking about the whole vision, he's using a different word. But when he's talking about the vision of 2300 days, he's using a different word. And that same word is actually, when the angel comes in chapter 9, that's the same word he says, I have come to make thee understand the vision. And that vision, the only vision that Daniel didn't understand in chapter 8 is the 2300 day prophecy, because the other one of the ram and he goat, the angel already tried to explain that to Daniel. So the only one that Daniel didn't understand at the end of chapter 8 is the 2300 day prophecy. So the way I connect that is in chapter 9, when he comes to explain, he says, now 70 weeks are determined. And just like I said, that word determined, I wanted you also to pull up the original word. That word determined is cut off. So they understand that is that it has to be cut off from the 2300 day prophecy, which is the larger vision.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's the standard SDA position. I mean, if we want to cover Kazone and Mare, we can, but it gets kind of technical. I'm not sure if the audience can follow it that well, but um, essentially, what I would say to that is in verse 13, notice it doesn't say, then I heard a holy one speaking, and another holy one said to the one who spoke, for how long is the vision? And that's it. That's the end of the verse. It doesn't stop there. It says the vision concerning, and then it lays out the activity of the little horn. So, in other words, for how long is the vision that is focused on the regular burnt offering, the transgression that makes desolate, the giving over of the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? All of that we would both agree is the activity of the little horn. And
Yes.
so it's asking you for how long is the little horn active? The whole verse is asking you that. Now, if the verse stopped at vision, so if it stopped at for how long is the vision, and that was the end of the verse, then I think you'd have a strong point. But it doesn't. It keeps going on and saying, how long is the vision that concerns the regular burnt offering, the transgression that makes desolate, and the giving over of the sanctuary and the host to be trampled underfoot? I think the use of the words kazon and mare, mare is used more of when the interpretation of the vision is given. So when
Okay.
So it should, like, with the appearance of Gabriel, the word appearance is mare, vision. So the vision, the appearance of the man Gabriel, the mare of Gabriel, he's come to give you understanding of this vision that had a bunch of symbols in it. If you think about having receiving a vision, starting in verse 1 or verse 2, and you're seeing a ram that's standing on a bank. You're seeing a ram with two horns. You're seeing a goat with a long horn that charges the ram. You're seeing all this imagery. You're not going to know how to interpret that unless the interpretation is given to you. And so that's what Gabriel is here to do, is to give him the understanding of the interpretation of these images.
Okay, but so you acknowledge that these are those words that are used are different. The did you say kazo? How do you say that word? Whatever
Yeah.
that word is, and the mare. Those are two different. When Daniel is talking about, I mean, he's trying to write this chapter. He's trying to make a distinction between the words. The word he's choosing carefully the words that he's using, which I believe are key to help us understand this vision. So why I will say that this 2300, in as much as it says concerning the daily, to do all those things, activities of the little horn, like you said, it doesn't take away from the fact that that time period, till the little horn, that time period of 2300 days can accommodate the little horn doing all those things. So, um, so the little, I mean, when it says how long shall be the vision, that word, like I said, is a different one. He's talking about the, you know, the word that is used there is mare. So the way that I understand that, I don't see a contradiction there, because I can, you can actually argue that within the 2300 day prophecy, the little horn is still doing all those things. In as much as it says concerning, I believe that Daniel, okay, not Daniel, but I believe that the ones talking here are angels. These angels are concerned about the little horn so much uh, because they have seen that little horn doing activities, just like I mentioned in chapter 7, which is giving us another perspective of the little horn, which, like I said, following the repeat and enlarge, principle, still Daniel is trying to help us understand the activities of the little horn. Um, uh, and that's why even the angels are concerned about that little horn. So for me, the way that I'll argue that is they're asking about the activities which is doing, not mentioning the other two kingdoms, because they are more concerned about what the little horn is doing to the people. And just like I said, that whatever the little horn is doing to the people is still accommodated within the 300-day prophecy.
Yeah, so I think that is a over. Um, I think you're giving. How do I say this? You're giving too much meaning of Daniel using two words for vision, and I'll show you why I say that. So in verse 13, the word chazon is used for vision. Let me pull that up real quick. So chazon essentially is that experience of receiving a vision. And so, of course, he receives that vision at the very beginning in verse 2. He goes into that ecstatic state and receives the vision. And he sees all these things. And then mare, right here, mare has to do more with the substance, and here in particular the interpretation of these images that are given. And so there's a slight difference between the two, but I don't think the difference is so much so that we are to connect them where the chapters are not connecting. And so what I mean is, um, all of this that's happening with the little horn, all this activity is happening during the time of the third beast system. And so even if you want to connect that little horn with the little horn of chapter 7, which I don't believe you can, um, there's a huge issue there because there's no transition into the fourth beast system. It's still during the reign of the third beast. And then, as I said, and I'll say it again because I believe it's a strong point. Um, Verse 13 is saying that this vision that he has received, it concerns the regular burnt offering and the activity of the little horn, excuse me. And so the question is asked for how long. The answer is given for 2300. And so for 2300, I mean, it's just, it's if you're to ask me, hey, Brandon, how long will it take for you to get over to my house? And I say for an hour and a half, then I will arrive. That means that in an hour and a half, I will be at your place. So, in the same fashion, for how long is this vision that concerns the activity of the little horn? The answer is given for 2300 evenings and mornings. Then the sanctuary is restored. So, in other words, for 2300, the sanctuary has not been restored. And so, if we start that in 457 BC, there's a contradiction because in 457 BC, the sanctuary is being restored. It's not being trampled down upon. But if we interpret chapter 8 as you do with the 2300, then we have to say that the sanctuary is actually being trampled down upon in 457 BC. Is that
Okay,
clear?
okay. You see, well, it's not really clear. I will not say it's clear, but I'll say that for me, just like I mentioned at the beginning when I was beginning this, is I need to be able to see something clearly without it, without me getting confused and actually all my questions getting answered. And maybe maybe this is going to go to the viewers who are watching to make decision for themselves, because this the Adventist position actually I believe is the only one that makes sense. Because even if I was to give you that what you're saying is true, there is no other way you can continue explaining, explaining like let's say chapter 9, because we haven't looked at the word cut off, just like I said. But clearly, we can say that when the angel comes, I've made this position, I mean, these points over and over again. I want to repeat again. When the angel comes in chapter 9, the only vision that Daniel had not understood is the vision that is the 2300-day prophecy, because the angel had explained the one that is the ram and the vision. So the only one that Daniel did not understand is the 2300-day prophecy. And why I mentioned is that we should avoid studying the book of Daniel chapter 8, especially in isolation, is because at the end of all this, even as in as much as the angel tried to explain that the first portion of the 2300-day prophecy, Daniel still didn't understand it. Actually, at the end of chapter, if you go to chapter 12, actually the angel tells him, I don't know if the angel, sorry, I think it's the angel who tells him, shut up the word, because this word, I mean, or this book rather, is until the end time. So they that Adventists like to connect this, the whole chapter, so that, I mean, the whole Bible, so that it makes sense, is in chapter 10 now of Revelation, when we see an angel coming down with a little book in his hand, but this book is open. The only way this will click in the mind of readers is, oh, wait a minute. There's a book in chapter 8, or there's a portion of, or rather a book in Daniel chapter 8, which was said to be sealed until the time of the end. You see, so the way that makes sense to me so beautifully to harmonize them, to the point where I actually accepted this Adventist position, is I can clearly see, because our position, I'm sure you are aware of our position. Because adding the dates from 457 BC to 1844, we see that 1844 there was a great movement that was what you call that I'm looking for, that was looking up to the second coming, which they had actually not understood the prophecy. But then we see that picture clearly in chapter 10, where it says, uh, uh, John is trying to eat this book, but in the mouth it's so sweet, but in the mouth it's as bitter. So for me, having all these cloud of witnesses to try to explain the prophecy of the Daniel chapter 8, because like I believe the book of Daniel Daniel and Revelation should be studied together. So the only connection that I am connecting here, Daniel, between Revelation and Daniel, is Daniel chapter 8 with this book closed, and the Revelation chapter 10 with this book open. There are other ways. I mean, I wish we had more time to study this, so that I can break down the Adventist position to the point where it makes sense to even our listeners who are listening. But in my mind, just with what you've shared right now, I will not be convinced, or I will not actually abandon my position, because there, if um, even if we were to do with Daniel chapter 8, still, even if we didn't have Daniel chapter 8, reading Revelation chapter 10, we are like, wait a minute, this angel is coming down. Then how will you understand Revelation chapter 10? Because we are seeing an angel coming down with a little book uh, open, but there's nowhere else in the entire Bible where we see a book closed. So the only way that uh, I'm being I'm getting able to understand, or to understand the Bible, is because of studying these chapters, or studying the book together as one big picture, instead of taking, or rather isolating these prophecies.
So maybe I'll ask you this question. This might help you to see my one of my issues with the Adventist position. If you could, in chapter 8, could you show us where the beast system transitions from the third beast to the fourth beast? Because what I want to point out real quick is never in the book of Daniel do we see a transition from one beast system to another, and the new beast system is ever referred to as a little horn. It is always referred to as a new beast, represented by some animal. Never, not one, has a little horn ever been a new beast system. It's always been a little growth on an already established beast system. So if you could show us that in chapter 8, that'd be cool.
Okay, I think then the quotation for us understanding this, the question that you're asking is chapter 8 and verse 8. Can we go there? Can we go to then chapter 8 and verse 8 and try to understand? And again, like I said, viewers who are watching, just try to follow this and see which position makes sense. Chapter 8 and let's start from verse 7 for context. It says, I saw chapter 7 and verse 7. I saw him come close to the ram, and he was enraged against him and struck the ram and broke his two horns. Which version is this? Okay, it's
Oh,
okay.
you want the
Uh,
KJV?
yes, please. Let me use KJV.
There we go. I forgot.
It's okay. Uh, there we go. Okay, yeah. It's not that I'm used to KJV so much to the point where it seems like I'm reading something else. Okay, so it says, I saw him come close and unto him, unto the ram, and he was moved with choler against him, and smote the ram and brake his two horns, and there was no power in the ram to stand before him. But he cast him down to the ground and stumbled upon him, and there was none that could deliver the ram out of his hand. So this is the vision of the ram and the he goat. Then verse 8 is key for me. Therefore, the he goat waxed very great, and when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and four was broken, and for it came up four notable ones towards the four winds of heaven. Then let's read now verse 9, understand this carefully. And out of one of them, I believe the contention for both our positions is verse 9. We have to agree it says here out of one of them, which what is this them referring to? Is the term them referring to the four notable horns or the four winds of heaven? Okay,
I would.
that's really
Oh,
the whole contention.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
go ahead.
oh, you're asking me? Yeah, yeah. Sorry. I would say either. It's a distinction without a difference, in my opinion. It could be either. It doesn't matter because if it comes out of one, it comes out of the other.
Okay, so you can see a clear because earlier you were asking about a transition. You can see a clear transition here between one kingdom and the other. Because I mean, for me, I can clearly see it here. It says, "Out of one of them came forth a little horn." So this coming forth of the little horn, to me, that is what is symbolizing a transition between the third kingdom, or between Greece and Rome.
Okay, I see. Got you. Okay, yeah. So let me address that.
Okay.
Let me go. Okay, so verse 8 and 9. Then the great horn, or the great horn, then the goat became exceedingly great, but when he was strong, the great horn was broken, and instead of it, there came up four conspicuous horns toward the four winds of heaven. Now, that is the four generals that took the four regions of the Greek Empire. And out of one of them, so out of one of the four horns, which are towards the four winds of heaven, so if it comes out of one of the horns, it comes out of one of the four winds. So out of one of them came a little horn. So it's still one of these four Greek empires. These four empires are all the Greek empire. They're just broken up into four parts. So this little horn, which grew exceedingly great toward the south, east, and toward the glorious land, is still a um, part of the Greek empire. We don't see a transition from the goat to a I don't know, another type of beast. Let's say a mountain lion. There's no transition from the goat to the mountain lion, which would represent the fourth kingdom. So we don't see a transition there, but the interpretation of that is given here in the Mare. And let me get to it. He says in verse 22, it says, "As for the horn that was broken, in place of which four others arose, four kingdoms shall arise from his nation." His nation refers to the nation of Greece, but not with his power. So that's referring to Alexander the Great. Alexander's nation was the nation of Greece. And so these four kingdoms are the four kingdoms of the Greek Empire. And at the latter end of their kingdom, notice it is still their kingdom. So it's still the Greek kingdom. And it's just at the latter end of their kingdom. When the transgressors have reached their limit, we still have to find out what your position is on who these transgressors are that have caused this little horn to rise. And now, real quick, I'm going to go to chapter 11 just to show this is the case. It says in verse 4, verse 3, then a mighty king shall arise, and this is referring to Alexander the Great, who shall rule with great dominion and do as he wills. And as soon as he has arisen, his kingdom shall be broken and divided toward the four winds of heaven. So, in other words, that's why I said it does not matter to me if we say four horns or one out of one of the horns or out of one of the winds. It is the same thing. But not to his posterity, nor according to the authority which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be plucked up and go to others beside these. So this shows as well that these four kingdoms are still the Greek Empire. And this little horn, it comes out as a Greek ruler.
Okay. So can we go back to Daniel chapter 8? Let me see something. Daniel chapter 8, verse 23. Okay, 23. So there's a question that you've asked me. I don't think I have the answer to that right now, but I can get back to you. When the question you asked was when what's the transgressors mean? I guess that's something for me to go study further. But either way, I don't think that is really that will have any impact in changing my position because it says here in the latter time of their kingdom. Earlier, you talked about the latter end of the indignation, and you talked about something. But here it clearly says in the latter end time of their kingdom, and then you said this kingdom is Greece. So the question will be: was Antiochus Epiphanes did Antiochus Epiphanes reign at the latter end of Greece? Because
Um,
my understanding is,
yeah.
my understanding is he was about the eighth king out of maybe 20 something kings. So how will you understand that? Because it says in the latter time of their kingdom, not their indignation. I mean, not indignation. It clearly says in the latter time of their kingdom, and you clearly, you said that this kingdom is Greece. So how do you respond to that?
Yeah, I would just simply say it's referring to the latter half of the Greek Empire, which Antiochus was part of the latter half. And actually, he was the last great king of the Greek Empire. After him, all the other kings were more or less just rubbish and kind of um, caused the kingdom to become nothing, powerless and bankrupt and all that. But as a side note for your listeners, because I think you're streaming this on your channel as well.
Oh, actually, sorry, I'm not doing that. I'm not
Oh,
streaming this. Uh, like I said, these things are new to me, man. I don't even know how to do that. If I knew that, I would have. I was going to do that.
no worries.
Maybe
You
what
can.
I wanted to do, yeah, what I wanted to do was maybe download this and then share that to my channel as
I have no idea how to do that either, to be honest with you. But I mean, you're more than welcome to reshare it or repost or
well.
whatever
Yeah.
you want to do. But um, if you read the historians and especially the uh, more agnostic, non-believing in prophecy historians on the Seleucid Empire, a lot of them make a note, and they don't know really how to deal with this. They're not sure why this happened, but they note that Antiochus the Fourth was the most cruel out of all of the emperors of all the rulers of the Seleucid Empire towards the Jews, towards Israel. No other ruler during that time of that one of the four horns, so the Seleucid Empire, no other ruler was nearly as barbaric and heinous towards the Jews as Antiochus the Fourth was. And what I would obviously answer, but that's because it was divine prophecy that was being fulfilled. But it's interesting to note that these agnostic, non-believing historians note that Antiochus the Fourth was actually very wicked towards the Jews, and we can show them how that is the case with here with Daniel chapter 8 and the layout of the little horn, um, and his activity towards the Jews. But that was just a kind of a side note. Now, latter end, I think sometimes in the Bible does not have to mean like in our minds, it may mean the last like 10 years. So like if we say the latter end of our life, we kind of think maybe like the last 10 years of our life or something like that. but sometimes, and I think it's like in Job 40. I'm looking it up, but it's Job 42 verse 12. That in the context is like verse 9 to like 15 or somewhere around there. It says, "So the Lord blessed the latter end of Job more than his beginning, for he had 14,000 sheep and 6,000 camels and 1,000 yoke of oxen and 1,000 she asses." And it goes on to show his age, and it was only the latter end was the latter half of his life, but it just it's referred to as the latter end of his life, but it's really the latter half. So I think sometimes latter end can refer to latter half, not just the last couple years of whatever it's referring to.
Mm, seriously, I don't see how that will make sense here. Okay, no, okay, maybe it does make sense to some people, but personally, I don't see how it makes sense because it says in the latter time of their kingdom, and just like I said, okay, because he was the eighth, right? He was the eighth, and how many were there? Were there like 20, 28, 29 or something, 29? You know, if even if I was to grant that the latter means half, still eight is not half. The latter half will be maybe 16 or 15 or something like that. Still, I don't see how that will apply here. But anyway, like I said, everyone can hear or listen to these positions and then, decide for themselves, really. But okay, I don't know how much longer we're gonna do this because I really have to go. But um, for anyone else that is listening there, I mean, listening, I would say it's really important for us to understand these important truths. Again, like I said, the only way that this will make sense is if we study the whole Bible, the Bible as a whole, not isolation. Because I believe like what the critics of Adventist Church have done is studying the book of Daniel chapter 8 in isolation without really taking into account other chapters like chapter 9 and most importantly like chapter Revelation chapter 10, which I was hoping to hear your response in regard to how I'm connecting the little book closed in chapter Daniel and the little book open. But again, like I said, I really have to go. I don't know if we can do this again. Uh, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I mean, we can. I want to respect your time, so we can talk and set up another time. I don't have as much time as I used to, so it'll probably be maybe a couple of weeks. That's just an example. It could be longer than that, or maybe not as long as that. But we'll set up another time. Just real quick, I want to mention to whoever the latter half. What I'm referring to is the time period of the reign of the Seleucid Empire itself, not how many kings in the middle of the kings. Because if you look at after Antiochus, like the kings were reigning for only a short period of time, and then they die off. Another one come and die off really quick. So, but anyway, just to explain that a little further. But yeah, we can just talk. You know, tag in a community post or get an email from
Yeah,
me eventually or whatever. But I mean, either way, man, I really appreciate you, Eric, and I appreciate you coming on and discussing this with me. It was a very good experience. I really enjoyed it, and I hope you feel the same.
yeah, thank you. I actually appreciate this. And just like I mentioned earlier, I really love studying. So, I mean, and I don't just study with people that agree with my position. I also like to be challenged. Because for me, like I said, I'm pretty convinced of my position. So if I can get someone to challenge me and actually show me my error, I don't think I'll be prideful enough to deny. I'll just clearly see it. But again, I only accepted this because you said this will be a discussion, not a debate. I don't think I'm really ready for debates now, but I can do discussions like this as long as because this sounds like a Bible study, trying to sharpen, just like the Bible says, iron sharpens iron. So yeah, this I can do. I cannot do debates. So thank you again for asking me to do this. And like I said, I only did this because this was respectful, and I've also enjoyed the time.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Eric. Again, I do appreciate that. And we will set up a future discussion. And yeah, I definitely don't mind looking at it as a Bible study. I don't even have the skills to do a debate. I'm too scatterbrained most of the time, so I don't think I'll ever do a debate. but um,
So
but yeah, with that being said, I want to thank the audience. I want to thank you for your time. I know it is precious to you. And so you guys spending some of it here, listening to us talk about the Bible and our positions, and having a great discussion, it means a lot to me. And so I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, your evening, or your night with your family, your friends, and your loved ones. And at the end of the day, may the Lord be glorified. May his kingdom spread. Grace and peace to everybody. God bless.
Amen. Do you mind saying the last prayer? Because I know maybe for those who are wondering.